The purpose of this video is to just go over my deck that I made for the tournament that is in fall of 2024. I got 6th place out of, let me see how many people. It was a good sized tournament. 16. So it's respectable, but it's not first, and so we're going to just go over the pros and cons, goods and bads that I've experienced through the tournament. So initially, oh wow, there's a lot to talk about. So the core of this deck is the interaction between Hagrid and Time Turner and Corridor. So basically the idea is I don't have to discard for Corridor like other people will need to. And if I have a Time Turner in play, then that lesson goes into play. So basically, I draw a card. In the end, with Hagrid and Time Turner and Corridor in play, I'm basically net drawing a card while the opponent is discarding a card from play, which is honestly just really brutal. I realize now that there's stronger decks out there. The tournament actually hasn't finished yet. I'm just kind of excited to give my thoughts here, and we'll see how the tournament goes. But as far as how this deck compared to the other decks in the tournament that it played against anyway, it lost to a deboning deck and a Draco Quidditch item deck. So part of the issue here is I couldn't control the deboning deck fast enough, and the deboning deck had a lot of ways to get lessons back, so it eventually could reach 7 power, and I just couldn't beat them in the race and keep them down. And against the Draco Quidditch deck, it was just all of those extra actions from Draco just outpaced what Corridor could do. That's the short version. So I did a lot of weird things, and I want to give my reasons for them. First of all, there's another beautiful thing about this deck is that Hermione's Time Turner can find unique cards. And so with this as the staple, right, these three, I just need one basic damage source, whatever that is, whatever that ends up being, right? And with this as the core, if I can just control the cards that go in play, then whatever my damage source is going to stick, and I win, is the idea. What's beautiful here is I can find a unique card to handle specific things. Like I can use Dementor's Kiss on Grip Hook. If I ever do get Grip Hooked, then I use Dementor's Kiss, and with all the draw power from this deck because of Hagrid, it's game over, and I just win if I get Grip Hook under this. Another thing is like something that's unique is Lockhart's Office. That also helps with Grip Hook. I can find Pomfrey if I ever need to heal. If something's in the discard, I can use Hedwig to find it. Quirrell is really nice. In the past, before Goblet of Fire came out, potions used to be the main Draco ramp, and returning cauldrons to Draco's hand really hurts their lesson count because they have to play those lessons or play the items and get rid of the lessons again, which really hurts. So finding him is really critical here. Other unique things, Full Moon really helps with the newts because they're just like a different damage source threat. So that's unique, and we can find that. There's a bunch of stuff in the sideboard that's unique. This helps with characters. This helps with events. This helps with adventures. I could have used this for In the Stands, for example. I was able to take a game off of the Draco Quidditch deck because somehow I got lucky and was able to find Fudge on my initial draw, so I was able to play that turn 1, but I could find Fudge, and if somehow all of my creatures die, I can find Scabbers as a damage source. Never actually happened, but and then Stan is also another damage source. And what's nice here with Full Moon and Hagrid's Umbrella is they provide power, so I can find power, which is really nice if I ever need to get up to 6. Surprisingly, I never actually needed to do that. Snape is also a findable power, but it takes 2 actions, of course. And the 7 healing is actually really nice because I only really need to recycle a few cards and put them back into the main deck so I can find them again. So if someone gets rid of a corridor, I can just find another one. They get rid of that one, find another corridor, and then I can find Snape and put those back in and just keep the process going. It's just really awful to play against if you're not ready for it. So one thing I love about this deck are the newts. There's a lot of aggro decks out there, and if I can keep a single newt in play, then my creatures will eventually win, especially if I have a full moon in play. They do bonus damage. So if the opponent plays a creature at all, it just comes into play and dies the next turn, which is just invaluable. Another thing is the Basilisk is a findable solve for Pep Talk. So if I am able to get to Time Turner, then I can just find the Basilisk and solve Pep Talk forever. When I played against the Friend George deck, luckily I drew into a Basilisk, so I didn't have to find it with a Time Turner. It saved me a bit of time. So that was huge. Some other thoughts here are the Pixies. Pixie was an interesting one because I was afraid of the unknown and I didn't know what I didn't know, right? And so that's where Pixie comes into play, is I can play a Pixie, learn what's in their hand game 1, which is extremely valuable. And, you know, taking a card comes second to that. Security Troll helps to keep newts in play so that the creatures, the opponent's creatures are constantly dying. It keeps cards under Pixies, and it keeps a Basilisk in play. It did come in handy, I think, once in this tournament, but in hindsight, it's honestly pretty expensive tossing that Carry Magical Creatures lesson, especially if I'm trying to use Time Turner and Corridor. It's unlikely that Hagrid gets to actually benefit from that. And then Charms, this is an interesting one. So when I was building this deck out, I was afraid of Lesson Destruction, really, really afraid. And I put in Start a Turn Feast. And then as I kept going, I realized that the best cure to Lesson Destruction is to find lessons in the deck instead of pull them from the discard. So, and it was overkill to find 4 of them. That was excessive. So I chose Alchemy instead. But when I was doing all that testing, I just really loved Depulso. Its price and what it does are just so good. So I had Tricolor for this tournament, and it actually kind of worked. There was one game where I didn't have a Transfiguration lesson, which was really weird because my count for that's pretty decent. 6 plus 4. So like, I mean, it's about half of my lessons, and I just couldn't get a Transfig. And then I lost it. And so even if I had an Alchemy in my hand or an I Solemnly Swear, then I couldn't use them without Transfiguration. And that was brutal. And there was another game where I couldn't find a Time Turner, which really is the backbone of this deck. And not being able to find a Time Turner is really bad. So if I ever do revisit this deck, I'll need to consider ways of finding the Time Turner, maybe get Inheriting the Map or something. Substitute Cat, maybe. And another thing that I like to do, and I don't see a lot of other people do it, is I put one copy of some stuff in, like a single I solemnly swear is way better than zero because it's just the amount of ramp you get. But putting more than 4 I solemnly swears in the deck, I don't want to have 2 I solemnly swears in my hand. I mean, I guess 1 would be fodder, but definitely not 3. You don't want to have 3 I solemnly swears early on. That's just, you're not going to have enough cards for it. So 1 copy of that, and I might as well have a single copy of this book. And actually, it did come into play this tournament where I had it in play and I discarded the book for its effect, which was really nice. I'd rather have 1 copy and just use it. And if I don't draw into it, then that's fine. Picking on Neville's a classic. I think I've covered everything here. Hagrid, yeah. Flying Motorbike. This helps with Empty Classroom, which actually never came into play. And it helped me get out of In the Stance, which was really nice. I was really afraid of drawing this tournament, and it actually never came up. And so I had some EKTs. Vanishing Cabinet, I sideboarded for Draco, but it's just crazy the amount of items he can play. The big thing here is if I get rid of an item... Okay, in the past, I would get rid of a potions item, and then he'd have to play a new potions item and get rid of lessons for it, right? But with the new cards for the Goblet of Fire, the Quidditch items, for example, they provide this power at no cost, and it was just way too much, way too fast, and I couldn't get rid of the items fast enough because there were no repercussions for getting rid of items. And he could just play more. And I think that's pretty much it. I don't know if I want to add anything. I guess in hindsight, so let's just talk about the tournament. The deboning deck in particular, like that's the one that makes me rethink the deck as a whole, because I could sideboard against a Quidditch Draco with this, but if I'm playing this deck against another deboning deck, then it's just a coin toss. I was able to get 1 game, but it's really tough. It's like we're almost there with this, but with deboning as restricted and not banned, there's no answer. I don't have an answer with this deck, so I'll probably have to reconsider the deck that I build for future tournaments until the new banned and restricted list comes out in June. Hopefully deboning is banned because that's awful. Last thoughts. This deck feels great to play. It's super fun, and I love my play style. That's what I wanted to talk about, is I really like making decisions and choices. I think there's decks out there where you just hope that you draw a card that you need and you don't, and then you just draw looking for cards that you want, and I really hate that feeling. And with this, you can be like, okay, what do I want to find? Do I want to find Hedwig to do something in the discard? Do I want to heal so I can put things into my main deck and find them with a time turn? And you make all these decisions as you go, and I really enjoy that about this deck. In the future, I'd probably make it 2 colors instead of 3. The Depulso was nice, but not being able to draw Transfiguration was just atrocious, even though it only happened once. But I'm still open-minded. On whatever deck I decide in the future, it might be worth it, but if I do this deck again, I could probably do it in 2 colors. So yeah, I do enjoy this deck. I think it's really good, but I think that Draco in particular is just too strong, and I can't... I'd have to run Table Trouble or some multi-clear in order to handle that, and then against deboning, there's no reliable way to win against that I can think of. So those are my thoughts, and that's why I made the deck that I did. Sixth place, I think, is respectable, but also, I mean, we got a long ways to go. It's just a shame that I couldn't play against people that, placed higher than me so I could actually see how this fares against them. Because I actually don't even know what other people brought to the table. But those are the reasons why I did the things I did. I guess one last thing I want to add is my ratios of lessons are a little weird. I needed COMC for Hagrid's ability, and Transfiguration's critical to find more lessons. And then Charms, it's like I could live without Depulso, but I don't want to. So that's why the ratio is a little lower there. Anyway, those are my thoughts. I hope it was entertaining. One more thing I want to add is Depulso and Vanishing Cabinet are interesting choices. I didn't take Table Trouble, and the reason why is because I don't want to get rid of my own Time Turner, and I'm really afraid of Brass Scales, which makes Draco Potions decks really, really good, and putting Brass Scales on the bottom means that you can't find a Brass Scales with a Brass Scales, and so it stops that cycle where Table Trouble wouldn't be able to stop that cycle. So that was the decision behind taking Vanishing Cabinet instead of Table Trouble. I just wanted to add one thing. Another beautiful thing about this deck is that the Time Turner is unique and Corridor is unique, so I can find those, obviously. And if I find a single Time Turner, then with Hagrid and his ability, I can go and find a Time Turner in case this one gets destroyed, right? Find a Time Turner to replace the one that's in play if I need to, and then once I have a Time Turner in my hand reliably, then I can begin my, search for a corridor and start putting people in the doghouse. I just wanted to kind of add that because that's just a critical part of this deck is once I start, it's reliably going to continue.